heavenly touch. 'Cause I've been backsliding. I need a little guiding for my soul. Only heaven knows. 'Cause I just need a helping hand. It's gonna help me stand. It's gonna help me stand. 'Cause I just need a helping hand. It's gonna help me stand. It's gonna help me stand. It's gonna help me stand.
Good evening. She was a little
It's
girl.
gonna help me stand.
She was a little girl growing up in
She was a little
It's
girl,
gonna help me stand.
just like other little girls. She probably played with her doll.
She was a little girl
and picked
growing
with her
up in,
brother
she was a little
It's
girl,
gonna help me stand.
and hung out with her mom and
just
dad.
like other little girls.
She probably played with her doll.
She was a little girl
and hung out with her mom and
just
dad.
like other little girls.
She probably played with her doll.
She was a little girl
I think you may have the.
and hung out with her mom and
Do you have the screen open on your computer, Donna?
Green?
I think you may have. Do you have the? Are you playing the screen? Do you have Facebook or YouTube open on your computer?
In
May
StreamYard.
have. We've got audio. Do you have it on your phone? Do you have it on any other devices near you? Because it's coming back through your microphone. Got audio. Do you have it on your phone? Do you have it on any other devices near you? Because it's coming back through your microphone.
Eddie?
Do you have it on any other devices near you? Because it's coming back through your microphone.
Eddie? Is it clear now? Now?
Do you have it on any? No, I don't think so. Let's give it 1 second to fully go through its cycle to clear, and then we'll start again. Let's give it one. Okay. Okay. Try to speak now.
Okay, so we should be ready to go this time. Yes?
Okay. Try to speak now.
So we should be ready to
We
go.
have. There is a loop. Sorry. Let me see what else we got. What else do we have connected? We didn't have this loop before we went live.
We should be ready to
We
go.
have. There is a loop. Sorry. Let me see what else we got. What else do we have connected? We didn't have this loop before we went live.
We should be ready to
We
go.
have. There is a loop. Sorry. Let me see what. Donna, can you disconnect and reconnect real quick? In the private chat, I've sent a message.
Here we go. Should be clear now. Okay. Yes. And we're live. We're sorry for the technical difficulties. We thought we had covered all our bases, but lo and behold, our humanity shined through. She was a little girl growing up in Nazareth. She probably played with her siblings and bothered her dad and took care of her cousins and was in the kitchen with her mom. But like most little girls, she was definitely looking forward to that day when she wouldn't be a little girl anymore, but physiologically she would become a woman. You know, the day that we always look for when we see that red spot. And then one day it was there. And oh, the joy she felt. Now she, this little girl, could have a baby. She could make a baby. And so for the next several years, she had her menstrual cloths and life was regular and it seemed like everything was going to be okay. But this particular month, she couldn't stop bleeding. She bled during her period and she thought that the time was up. And then the bleeding continued. So she asked her mom about it and her mom said, oh, it's probably just something a little abnormal, honey. Don't worry about it. It'll be okay. Week 3 and week 4. And it wasn't heavy, but it kept coming. And then before you know it, it was time for her other period. And she was still bleeding. And so you know how we do. We started to look for some home remedies. Well, let's see if you eat this, or if you take this bath, or if you, let's talk to grandma and see if she knows what to do. And they tried those things. And because it was cultural for a woman who was bleeding to be outside the camp because she was unclean, she was now deemed unclean. And she was supposed to be outside the camp. But it never stopped. The bleeding kept going on and on. And you know what happens when you're bleeding and you're not supposed to be? You get tired and you get anemic and you lose weight and your friends don't want to be around you because you're always tired and you don't want to go anywhere or do anything. And it's just really, really hard. And so then she started going to doctors and specialists and she had exploratory surgeries, but they couldn't come up with anything. And she couldn't attend all the family gatherings because she was unclean. She heard, however, that there was this man. Every time he went into a city, he healed everyone. And the rumor was, if you could just touch the hem of his garment, you'd be well. And so she covered herself up and she headed to where she heard he was going to be. He was actually traveling because that was his job, to heal. And he had left one town and was headed to another when this man came up asking about, could he heal the daughter? And he said, certainly, I'll be happy to do that. And as he starts to meander through the crowd, heading towards this other home, this woman who'd been bleeding for 12 years decides, here's my chance. So she's covered up and she moves through the crowd, trying her best to get to where he was. And as she got closer, people were looking at her a little strange because, you know, they knew her problem. And she figured, I don't want to disturb anything. I just want to get close enough to touch the hem of his garment. And if I could touch the hem of his garment, I believe I'll be made whole. And so she got down and she reached her hand out. And just as she reached it out, he passed by her and she touched the hem of his garment. And depending on the story that you read, each version gives a little different detail. But in one of the versions, it says that immediately she felt whole. And in that moment, she stepped back and was going to just quietly go back to her life. But the great physician stopped and said, "Who touched me?" And his disciples wanted to know, how in the world can you even ask that question? All of us are here rubbing up against you. How do you know somebody touched you? And he said, because virtue's gone out of me. And I thought, all those people rubbing up against the great physician who had the power to heal, and only one person touched and received the healing. He said, "Daughter, I perceive virtue's gone out of me. But what I want you to know is that your faith has made you whole. So go and sin no more. Go in peace." And she left. And as I listen to that story and read that story in a number of places, I think about myself. I was that woman who didn't know if she'd be able to have children because I bled so much, who had migraine headaches, who was stressed out, who weighed more than she needed to weigh, who was struggling in her marriage, who was trying to parent a child, who was dealing with the fact that her dad was dying of cancer and her brother just announced that he had AIDS. And I'm thinking, what in the world could happen next? And that wasn't what took me to the doctor. What took me to the doctor was the lump in my breast. And when I got there, I kind of felt like the woman who touched the hem of his garment. Can somebody please help me? Because this is about to be too much for me. I'm Donna Green-Goodman. I'm so glad you joined us tonight. We're sorry for the technical difficulties that started us off, but we hope that you'll stay and that you'll call other people to participate and that you'll put your questions in the chat, and that when you leave this evening, you will have been challenged to make better choices, not just for yourself, but for other people that you love. I'm a daughter, a wife, a mother, a public health educator. I'm co-owner of Lifestyle Therapeutix here in Huntsville, Alabama with my husband. I'm a 25-year breast cancer survivor this week, and that's why we're here tonight. Were it not for COVID, I probably would have thrown a party somewhere with some friends who were with me 25 years ago when we asked God to intervene in my life and send me to people who could help make me whole. And he answered my prayer. It was a typical breast self-exam. In addition to all the bleeding and everything else going on, I had a lump in my breast from a lump that I'd had before. It grew back. We were watching it. We didn't think anything of it. But this year, the doctor said, "Donna, I want you to do a mammogram." So I did the mammogram. I went on vacation. I came back from vacation. He said, "You need another shot." Okay, so let's go get another shot and see what else is going on here. I went on another vacation because he had asked us the last time we'd been on vacation and we couldn't tell him. So he said, "You need to take a vacation." And we took 2 vacations. After the second vacation, he said, "Now I need you to see a specialist." So I went to see the specialist who suggests that perhaps you need to watch this or we can go ahead and do surgery. And my husband and I decided we were going to have surgery. Had surgery. As soon as the doctor opened, she knew it was cancer. She told my husband, but she asked him not to tell me yet. So I was waiting for the results. And as I waited, I thought it couldn't be anything because, I'm eating well, I'm living well, I'm doing the things that say I have worked at Morehouse School of Medicine teaching people how not to get cancer. And yet here I was thinking that perhaps I had it. And so as we waited, of course, I prayed. And then the week of July 1 through 4, we were waiting to participate in the Peachtree Road race, and my little sister, Cynthia Timpson Brain, was at the house with me, and we called the doctor to get the results. And she said, it is indeed cancer. We need to do more surgery and see what we're going to do from here. Well, my world fell apart. And when I stopped crying, I'm like, I've got to get myself together and figure out what to do. And so I decided that I was going to get second opinions and third opinions and look to see if I could find anybody who would support a less toxic kind of treatment plan for me. And I was at Emory Hospital and I couldn't find anyone. So I went in my closet and I talked to the great physician, the same one who healed the woman with the issue of blood. And he said, here's what you need to do. Find some physicians who understand the impact of your choices on your health outcomes and go to them. And then change your lifestyle and let's see what happens. And so I did that. And the doctors weren't happy, but I did it anyway, because I knew as a health educator that the choices that you make impact your health outcomes. I had been teaching it for years, and now I was the patient. And as I began to connect with physicians who understood the impact of choice on health outcome, I began to have hope. And I decided that I was going to make some lifestyle changes. And for the last 25 years, that's what I've been doing, making the changes, offering people hope, letting them talk about the things that are connected to their journey, and trying to change the narrative about health among African American women and the choices that we make. Because your history and your family and your genetics can load the gun, but what you do pulls the trigger. And I want you to know that the great physician still makes house calls. And I have assembled a group of people tonight who are going to explain to you how the choices make the difference. Because in the narrative of the woman with the issue of blood, there were other people there that were watching her. And when she went back home, I'm sure she talked to her girlfriends who may have had fibroids or endometriosis or something like that, and explained to them that not only had the bleeding stopped, but she had been made whole. And that's the point of this. We don't just want to treat one part of us. We want to treat the whole person so that the whole person can be healthy and the whole person can minister to other people about how they too can have the same blessing. So we're here today to do this. In the 25 years since I've been experiencing this, my health has improved tremendously. The first 6 months, the doctor said it wasn't so good. So 3 months later, I went back and looked at my records and everything had improved. All the cancer indicators were better. I was losing weight. All the fibrocystic breast disease had gone away. My migraine headaches were gone, and sex was off the chain. Let me tell you, when you change your lifestyle, all of that improves. And so I thought that was going to be it. But the longer you live with a diagnosis like this, you're still wondering, is it coming back? Why is this hurting me? And one of the things that I have experienced for much of the last 25 years was the inability to move this arm. And it's only been very recently that I discovered why. I went for my care at a place called Wildwood Lifestyle Center and Hospital, which is a facility that has been in existence since the 1940s, practicing what we now know as lifestyle medicine. Wildwood Lifestyle Center and Hospital, Uchee Pines Lifestyle Center and Hospital, and a Pattern Health Retreat are some of the facilities. And my husband learned how to do some of those same treatments on me when I came back. And so as I was experiencing the pain in my arm, as a physical therapist, he literally was trying to help me, but we were never able to get rid of it. And it wasn't until 2 years ago that we ran into another physical therapist friend of mine, Regina Boone Davis, who specializes in women's health care. And she explained that when you have the surgery, scarring sets up, and that scarring can mess you up. So she showed my husband how to do some modalities for that. And then my husband, who's a physical therapist, talked to my son, who is a yoga instructor. And I know some of us don't support yoga because of your faith belief system. But when my husband talked to my son about it, the principles of exercising physiology in yoga benefit the body. So in addition to the therapy I've been getting from my husband and from my son, the stretching has improved. And listen, when that music starts playing, you might see my arms up in the air because I'm going to be over here shouting. And so I believe that Deidre's going to put a link in the chat for you to go to YouTube, and there's a link there on how you can use these modalities to help improve any of the side effects that you've had. I'm just so glad y'all are here. I appreciate all the organizations that have sponsored us, supported us, contributed to make this happen. I appreciate all of you who are here joining with us, and I hope that you're sharing with other people. And I know that for the next hour or so, you are going to enjoy yourself. So I thank you for coming. I want you to know that you do not have to die. You don't have to be sick. When the children of Israel came out of the wilderness, God told them, if you hearken to the voice of the Lord your God, do what's right in his sight, give ear to his commandments, and keep his statutes, he won't put these diseases on you. And that's what we believe from faith. But tonight, the physicians are going to tell you why God said what he said. And I want you to embrace it. And I want you to practice it. And I want you to get better. And I want you to tell everybody that you can, so that they can be a part of this army that changes our community, so that we don't have to be the statistics that they say we are, but we can change the narrative. So thanks for joining us. Buckle up, sit back. I hope that you have a wonderful time.
1 in 8 women will be diagnosed with breast cancer.
But only 10% of your risk is related to genetics. For that other 90%, we can take steps to protect our health and reduce our risk by
choosing healthful plant-based foods,
getting active and exercising regularly,
limiting alcohol consumption,
and number 4, aiming for and maintaining a healthy weight.
Join us in taking this 4-pronged approach to beat breast cancer.
Hey,
hi, Donna.
I'm so happy to see you. Welcome to the celebration. Thank you for putting us on the calendar and being willing to talk to the people who need to hear from you. Before we went on, I was sharing with you that I met you via another event a few months ago, sponsored by PCRM and My Style Matters. And as I listened to you talk, I'm like, where was she 25 years ago?
I know.
I needed to have met her then. But I believe that all things work together in the time that they're supposed to. And I'm so glad that you're able to join us. After I listened to you that day, I went online to find out as much about you as I possibly could. And I was encouraged when I came across your websites. And then I found a writing that you had done for like a woman's book or something, an inspirational writing. And
so daily devotional, maybe?
Yes, that devotional. And I'm thinking, oh my God, because I never expected that to pop up. And as I read it, I thought, okay, she is not only practicing preventive lifestyle cancer surgery with her patients, but she also believes inside that there's something else happening here to us in this world. And you want to inspire hope. And that was like, I need to meet her. I need to meet her. So tell me, why is it so important for you to inspire hope in your patients?
I love to instill hope in women when they're diagnosed with breast cancer, because there's such a huge reason to be hopeful. And the main one is we've gotten so good at diagnosing cancers earlier and treating them so that we can eradicate this disease from your body forever. But to me, breast cancer doesn't come into your life to kill you. Although, let's be honest, sometimes we get these really virulent, aggressive, horrible forms, and it comes to light too late, right? People are already stage 4. And sometimes just meaningless cancers overtake us. But for the vast, vast majority, and scientifically, I'm got the proof to say that 90% of all breast cancer is not random, fate, and inexplicable or due to inherited genetic mutations. It's due to diet and lifestyle. So how hopeful is that this cancer, it didn't come here to kill you, it came here to change you. And Donna, you are living proof of that 180-degree change. So I love that sacred moment where I get to come alongside someone in what she perceived to be so dark and austere and scary and ominous and, just death around the corner. And we flip that. We turn the lights on and the dark dispels.
Yes. So what led to your support of a plant-powered lifestyle in the fight against breast cancer? Because you've already just mentioned that a lot of it is related to lifestyle.
Indeed. So this is embarrassing. I was practicing breast cancer surgeon. So I had gone through 4 years of med school, 5 years of surgical residency, an entire surgical breast cancer fellowship, and then had been in my own private practice for, at that moment, 17 years when I decided, you know what, I'm going to write a book. It's called Breast, the Owner's Manual. And every single thing I say has to be right, partly because I knew that arrows would fly and I needed to be arrow proof. Right. And also I don't want to be dispelling lies on falsehood, right? I wanted what I said to be true. And I always have to be right. That's why I'm delightful to be married to. So I went into the facts. Every single time I wrote a fact in that book, boom, it's referenced in the back. There's like 80 pages of over 1,500 scientific resources that prove every fact I say. Even things I knew, like 80% of all breast cancer is fed and fueled by estrogen, which becomes an evil protagonist in our breast cancer story. But even then I was like, maybe it's 78 now. I've been saying 80 for so long. And boom, I go into the science and make sure it was still 80, right? All right, so here I am about to say that the way I eat is the way everyone should eat, which was largely Mediterranean diet style. So lots of lean meats, chicken, turkey, fish. Admittedly, I was queen of the cheese platter. I knew cheese probably wasn't the best thing for you, but like I had my 5-year age Gouda, Manchego, the goat cheese. I was the queen. And I went into the science to prove that that was the way to eat. Shockingly, embarrassingly wrong. Like, I had never heard of any of this. I thought nutritional science was like Green Leafy magazine stuff. Oh, no. These studies are published in our most reputable journals. We're talking like, JAMA and Lancet and Clinicals of Oncology. It really blew my mind that there's so much nutritional science right in front of our physician eyes to behold and absorb and put into practice. But nobody reads it. Why? Because I already told you all my education. I never got a lick of medicine. Of nutrition. Not a dot, not a day, nothing. Except like learning the Krebs cycle and how we make energy inside our cells, which involves food, right? So if it were so darn important to the overall health and wellness of our entire human planet, don't you think I would have heard something along the way? No. So after a long day of work of diagnosing cancer and doing surgery and talking to patients and doing exams, you think I'm going to come home and flip through journals looking for some pearl of wisdom that I can dispense for free, like, hey, 3 cups of green tea can drop breast cancer recurrence by half, which you can, by the way. No, I'm not. I'm going to play with my kids or work out or eat or go to bed, right? So that was my life. And I was so blown away by the science that one day, after repeatedly, digging in, I was in that chapter of what to eat in my book. And so we have triplet sons. And at that time, they were 7 years old.
Okay.
And I had just read the ruling from the IARC, International Agency for Research on Cancer, that met in July 2015 in Lyon, France, to answer 2 questions. Does processed meat cause cancer? Does red meat cause cancer?
What year was that?
2015, July. Okay. So this was 2017, I'm writing it. And I'm like, 2 years ago, the agency under the WHO, the World Health Organization, is bought by no one, right? They're not sponsored. They are not accepting any, meat industry money or dairy or egg, whatever. And they came out putting in class 1, which is the highest, most definitely proven to be carcinogenic to humans, along with asbestos, tobacco, plutonium. Yes, all processed meat. That includes sausage, bacon, sliced deli meats, including the organic turkey breast that, I kid you not, I had just rolled up over a mozzarella stick and then rolled lettuce around it and put it in my kids' lunchboxes because I'm a product of the 80s. I was a young teen in the 80s. So I feared all carbs, bread, pasta, rice, and potatoes. So I was like any good loving mom, passing the carb fear on to my kids.
Right.
So they come home and I go running downstairs. I fling open the refrigerator doors and I say, boys, come here. We're going vegan. And they were like, yeah, what is vegan? And so we watched Netflix, What the Health, that night, and they got it. They'll come home from school, now they're going into 6th grade, and it's been 4 years straight of 100% whole food plant-based. I mean, every once in a while you'll get the little Beyond Meat burger, but that's a treat sheet. I'll tell you, we're very big into the fresh fruits and veggies, legumes, lentils, beans, peas, and all that. But they'll come home and be like, Mom, so-and-so, she has Lunchables every day. She's going to get diabetes.
Yeah.
So they understand the health consequences. And then once you really dive into this whole food, plant-based lifestyle, you really can't help but be kind of excited about lessening your carbon footprint, decreasing any contribution to climate change and planet destruction and antibiotic overuse and abuse. 80% of all antibiotics are given to the food that we eat, cows and pigs and such. And of course, animal cruelty. You just obviously don't think about that when you're a carnivore, but it's a really it's a beautiful realization for me to have had, and I feel blessed that my kids are in this in this walk of life at such a young age.
My son was 7 when we made the change, and I had always been vegetarian, lacto-ovo vegetarian. So we had to get rid of the things that you like, the cheese and the milk and the eggs and the butter and the ice cream. And I pretty much threw the refrigerator open, dumped all the stuff in the trash. But then I got busy creating other things for them to eat. And it was very interesting to watch them change with me, but then to embrace it. So that then my son, like yours, was also talking about the other things that were going on with him. When it comes to African-American women and breast cancer, we know that the odds are against us as African-American people when you look at the data. And what I like to say is, it's not that we're at any higher risk for it because we're Black, but we have a higher incidence in the Black community. When it comes to breast cancer for Black women, what do you think it is that causes the disparity? Because the mortality is 40% more likely among us than it is non-African Americans.
Exactly. So whites are just a smidgen more likely to get breast cancer than Blacks, and yet Blacks are 40% more likely to die. What is the reason behind all this is really multifactorial, and it comes down to genetic issues, socioeconomic issues, and lifestyle choices. So briefly, let's break it down. The genetic issues. So you can't do anything about this. But when you look at cancer databases, we find that compared to whites, Blacks are more often diagnosed at later stages of disease. Bigger tumors, more positive nodes, higher frequency of distant metastases. 44 versus 33% are diagnosed at later stages. Also at younger ages. So 33% of Blacks are diagnosed under the age of 50, whereas only 22% of whites are. And the younger you are, the more aggressive that tumor tends to be. And in point of fact, Blacks have a 22% chance versus 12% for whites of getting the most aggressive, least curable subtype of breast cancer called triple negative. The other really little understood reality that scientists are working on, but not enough, and that Human Genome Project and things like that need to get more funding. But there are these inherent biological differences inside the invasive breast cancers from patients of African versus European descent that literally adversely affect how genes and proteins and cellular mutations interact to make a cancer more aggressive and more evasive of the treatments that we try to throw at it. So, that's needed to tease out the effects of both inherited mutations that you get from mom and dad, but probably more importantly, what we term somatic mutations. These are the ones that your DNA acquires throughout life. And this has to do with exposures and our choices, what we eat and don't eat, how we think and don't think, whether we move or don't move, what we drink and don't drink. So that's a bit of the genetic stuff. Socioeconomic reasons, Okay, so prior to the 80s, guess what? The death rates between blacks and whites when it came to breast cancer, identical. In fact, if you want to get to the nitty gritty, blacks had less death than whites. So what happened in the 80s? Big hair, leg warmers, spandex, mammograms. So with earlier detection and improved treatment,
That's when the numbers.
mortality rates have dropped dramatically since 89 for both blacks and whites, but that racial disparity has only widened despite the downward trend. So the peak was in 2011 with a 42% gap, and big whoop, we've dropped it to only 40% gap now. So we've got so much work to do. And what's happening here is the socioeconomic stuff. So blacks are more likely than whites to be uninsured or underinsured, which then leads to less mammography use, so less earlier detection. Then once you're diagnosed, there are regional variations and in the South and other places where blacks live more often, there's decreased quality of care. There's a lack of access to timely care because now you're looking at a window of opportunity to kill this unwelcome intruder. And then there's reported statistically true underuse of cancer treatments by blacks for a number of different reasons. Certainly cultural beliefs come into play and communication barriers when we're talking largely about immigrants and refugees. All of this contributes to the differences in incidence and mortality between black and white races. And then finally, my favorite, because this is something that's so actionable, like it can change by the time we stop playing this video, right? Like,
Yes.
like, that's what's so exciting. The whole what you're lifting fork to mouth, chew and swallow, woo, and you unleash weapons either to your destruction or to your cure. Depends on what's on the end of that fork. But we know that obesity is 50% more common in blacks than whites, and diabetes is 60% more common. And those are two independent risk factors for breast cancer because they all tie into that estrogen fueling, the inflammation that sets the stage for DNA mutations, and ultimately oxidative stress, which allows a cancer to flourish. And look at the food deserts. This is my final point I wanted to make. The food deserts where many of our poorer black sisters live, the fresh fruits and vegetables are like don't exist. And instead the corner store is stocked full of these foods that are filled with preservatives that may keep the food alive, but they kill you, right? They make you overweight and hypertensive and diabetic, addicted to white flour and salt and oil and sugar. And so this is a broad umbrella overview of the why blacks die more often than whites once diagnosed with breast cancer.
Okay, so I know that our producer is going to be coming for us in a minute because we are having a good time here talking, and we've got some other people to come. It's interesting, before we go to the next question, it's interesting how you've explained the socioeconomic, and you mentioned some of the cultural stuff. A lot of the women that I know personally that have been diagnosed with breast cancer, some in my own circle of friends or relatives are African American or Caribbean American, but they don't fall in that lower socioeconomic status. These are educated women who are PhDs and MPHs and live out in the suburbs and all that sort of stuff. But I think of my mom, who was an educated educator, who did that cultural thing. She didn't think that she needed to go to the doctor unless she was having babies. And so we couldn't pay her to go to the doctor. And so even among Black women who are educated, there are still some cultural things that are attached to all of that point us, I think, to the same result, because we have access to the food and all of that, but we're not as comfortable with that regular visit to the physician. And my mom was diagnosed with late stage endometrium cancer because I couldn't get her to go to the doctor. And when she was diagnosed, I was in charge of her health. And then I'm like, yes, you're going to do this. And yes, you're going to do that. And I ran into that cultural thing that's going on. The next question that I want to ask you is triple negative breast cancer. We see a lot among African Americans. How does lifestyle impact that one? Because that's the one that's really hard to treat.
Lifestyle has a tremendous positive effect if you're eating a whole food plant-based diet, exercising regularly. What does that mean? Oh, it means 5 hours a week if you can carry on a conversation, and 2.5 hours a week if it's super sweaty and can barely, talk to your neighbor. And you need to find out, just Google your height and figure out what your ideal body weight range is, your body mass index. You want to get to that weight and stay there for the rest of your life. And you want to minimize or eliminate alcohol. Those 4 things I just mentioned. So a whole food plant-based diet, being ideal body weight, exercising regularly, and limiting or eliminating alcohol are the 4 boulders on the scales that tip you toward or away from breast cancer. Estrogen negative, estrogen positive.
Doesn't
It
matter.
all is affected the same.
Yes,
So
and
some
that's
of it is an
what I
estrogen
try to tell
axis.
people. That's what I try to tell them. So for you to say that as a physician, they don't understand that all of those choices improve the entire body, no matter where the cancer has come from.
Exactly. And that's the main thing I like people to understand when it comes to cancer. You want to make your body inhospitable. We all have millions of DNA breakages that happen on a daily basis, and you know nothing about them. Why? Because an intact functional immune system fed with, kale instead of cream puffs is going to seek out and destroy these cancer cells, these mutated cells, fix them or get rid of them. And it's happening all day long. Now, when that system gets overwhelmed by too many breaks because of too many bad choices, I think the easiest analogy is smoking, because people just have such an obvious tie to being, related to lung cancer. It's like, if you just stop blowing smoke all day long, maybe your body, instead of fighting off the carcinogens from that puff every 10 seconds, can do something else useful, right? And build up health instead of just reversing the damage you're constantly doing. And so that's what I like people to understand. And that's where, I'm a surgeon, so I'm biased, but if you get rid of the epicenter, like the actual mass, let's just use breast, right? Out of a breast, now your body, it's not aimed at a 2, 4, whatever centimeter wad of cancer. Guess what? Heads up, that cancer, a 1 centimeter sugar cube has 1 billion cancer cells. So that little guy started dividing, unbeknownst to you, not that anyone missed it, but that first cell went awry 5 to 10 years ago. It has been recruiting everything it needs, the acidity, the inflammation, the blood vessels. So angiogenesis, the birth of new blood vessels. Guess what squelches that? Berries, broccoli, takes away the blood flow from tumor cells. Who knew? But on the flip side, animal protein, even chicken, turkey, and fish, but certainly processed and red meats, and your eggs and cheese promote blood flow. Anyway, so back to this thing. You've got this wad of cancer. Get rid of it. Change your lifestyle. And now, guess what? Rather than trying to get at the big thing, you just took it out. Now we're getting out against the stragglers, the ones that are going to cause the potential recurrence. Now your immune system is just after a cell here, a couple cells there, and you want to make your life living in a way that not only are you fighting off cancer, but all of your major killers, heart disease, stroke, diabetes, Alzheimer's, obesity, and things that just steal your life of joy. You said, I want to instill hope. Here's the biggest hope. Rheumatoid arthritis, inflammatory bowel disease, joint pain, autoimmune disorders, thyroid dysfunction. All of these don't usually kill you, but they kill your joy. They rob you of happiness and satisfaction and vitality. And these same dietary principles and all the lifestyle habits that are going to kill your cancer are going to reignite your joy.
Listen, my husband and I were talking about joy the other day, and I'm telling you, as I began to make the lifestyle changes, my joy came back. And he teases me all the time because I'm, like you, just, and when you have lived through this or you've helped other people live through it, it gives you hope, which also brings you joy. I'm waiting for him to send something in the chat that we're almost out of time. Now, one other thing, I lived in Georgia, was in the grocery store behind some women who were cleaning, and they were looking at fresh fruit and vegetables. And this lady said, do you eat broccoli? And the girl said, oh, he says we're out of time. Okay, so we got to bring this to a close. How about quickly, how about cultural foods like collard greens and cabbage?
Yes, those foods, all of it. The cruciferous vegetable family, so the collard greens, turnips, and all of the broccoli, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, these are packed with phytochemicals, plant-based chemicals, specifically sulforaphane, which seeks out and destroys cancer cells. A study of, get this, 52,000 African-American women, followed them for 12 years, analyzed their food consumption, and what they found is that those who ate cruciferous veggies like your collard greens cut breast cancer by 41% by consuming how much? 6 servings a week. That's it. Less than one a day.
We eat that much in a meal.
Right? But literally one serving a day of your collard greens is going to keep breast cancer away.
That is good to know.
Amazing.
That is so good to know. I thank you for that. You have a book. You've mentioned that. They've already put in the chat where you can order the book. Is there anything that you've got going on that we need to know about that perhaps we can, tap into?
Participate. I would love but two things real quick. So one is the Cancer Kicking Summit. Go to pinklotus.com/summit and you can come live to a gorgeous oceanfront resort in California, October 16, 17, or after our celebration here ends, you can just go right on over and start watching me for 11 and a half hours, talk to you about the Cancer Kicking Summit. It's available as a virtual summit immediately. It's already done. And it is a really beautiful, transformative discussion of how you need to plant these 10 trees into the orchard of your life to live the most bountiful existence. So the eating tree is just one of them, but I do spend quite a bit of time diving into broccoli, among other things. And number two, any sister out there who's ever had breast cancer, please join Breast Buddies, breastbuddies.com, entirely free. We've got over 5,000 members. And what it is whether you're newly diagnosed or been there, done that, you'll go into one or the other category. And then the system matches a newly diagnosed person with someone who's already gone through things, age for age, stage for stage, treatment for treatment, solely for the purposes of support and friendship and love and guidance. Excellent. So it's a really sacred sisterhood. And for everyone who hasn't had cancer, we've got a bigger sisterhood of like 25,000 members under Power Up. So pinklotus.com/powerup, filled with blogs and education and resources and chat rooms. It's all free and really fun.
Thank you. I feel like I've hugged you. Thank you so much for being here, sharing all this information with us. We are going to be getting some of your books to give as gifts to those who have registered. So you all listen out for that. Go to Dr. Kristi Funk's website, follow her. I follow her on Instagram and Twitter. She's doing some amazing stuff out there. And look for health professionals like her who are connecting your choices to better health. Thank you so much for being here with us today.
God bless you, Donna. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to see you all. And that was great information that Dr. Funk shared about the importance of diet and those healthy choices, and also starting the choices early in life. So that's great that she started her young boys with those healthy choices. And I'm just going to share a little bit about the role of those lifestyle choices. We know that a healthy diet is important, and I'll just touch a little bit on the connection between weight and the hormones, because estrogen feeds cancer and the adiposity and the inflammation that's associated with it. Do that. So foods can heal and foods can cause destruction. And, you think about prevention. How much is an ounce of prevention? Well, when you compare it to the cost of breast cancer treatment, loss of work and everything, it's very, very inexpensive. And we've heard before that cancer factors are important, genetics, 10% of breast cancer usually, but the other things, environment, lifestyle, and chronic stress can form the foundation for developing cancer. So cancer prevention, start early. We know that children have a risk of cancer just by eating that processed meat. And Dr. Funk highlighted the role of the processed meat. And I emphasize that not only does it increase your risk of cancer, it increases your risk of heart disease, lung disease, and a host of other things. And remember, once someone has been diagnosed with breast cancer, they are more likely to die of cardiovascular disease than breast cancer. So it's important when you think about your lifestyle choices, not only are you preventing the breast cancer, but you're also preventing the heart disease and the stroke. And as she mentioned previously, the World Cancer Research Fund, they highlighted what are the strategies for preventing cancer. And they identified that a third of the most common cancers could be prevented by choosing a healthy diet, being physically active, and maintaining a healthy weight. So I thought about a lady I met once in Chicago. Her mother had died of breast cancer, and her sister had died of breast cancer. The oncologist from MD Anderson down in Texas called her and said, look, because she had been involved in the care of her mother and her sister, he said, do one thing for me. Your mom's died, your sister's died. I don't want to see you die also. Go on a plant-based diet and limit the free oils. That's what I want you to do. And so she did that, and she became very skinny. He said, don't worry about the weight loss. People will think you're too thin, but you're going to be able to fight cancer, breast cancer. And she has been free of breast cancer for, over 25 years now. I met her 25 years ago. So we know about being physically active, being a healthy weight, eating a diet rich in whole grains, vegetables, fruits, and beans. So when people say, oh, is there a magical food for breast cancer prevention? No, it's a lifestyle strategy. So the American Institute for Cancer Research has come up with these 10 principles to prevent cancer. And the beauty of it is these work for breast cancer, colon cancer, prostate cancer, all the various cancers. Be a healthy weight, be physically active, eat a diet rich in whole grains, vegetables, fruits, and beans, limit consumption of fast foods and other processed foods high in fat, starches, or sugar. And of course, the Harvard School of Public Health has done a lot of research on processed plant-based diets versus whole food-based plant-based diets. And what they found, epidemiologic studies, just looking at observational data, is that people that follow a processed plant-based diet, meaning just a lot of meat analogs, they actually have a worse health outcomes in terms of cardiovascular disease and cancer than those that follow a standard Western diet, full of meat and cheese. So limit the consumption of those processed foods, including processed red meat and red meat. Limit consumption of sugar-sweetened beverages. And for many of us, that's a popular thing, especially in the summer. We want that lemonade, the sugary lemonade. We want the Kool-Aid or the punch. And when you think about breast cancer and how certain regions of the country have higher rates, even in Blacks, the Southern women have higher rates of breast cancer than women living in, the West Coast. And part of that is really related to diet. And of course, limit alcohol consumption. Alcohol is a carcinogen. Your liver tries to get rid of it as soon as it sees it. And don't rely on supplements for cancer prevention, although we did publish a study this year that showed that vitamin D at 2,000 international units a day reduced the risk of developing advanced cancer. And we didn't have enough numbers to look at cancers by subtype, but total cancer. So vitamin D is an important vitamin to make sure that you're taking. And some people, they tell me, oh, I don't want to take any vitamin D because that's not natural. I'm going to go out there and get my sun. Well, if you're above the equator line and you indoors a lot or you live in the Northeast, you may still need vitamin D supplementation, especially if you have darker pigmentation. I would have to be out in the sun, several hours because of my pigmentation. And I live in the Boston area. And then for mothers, breastfeed your babies if you can. Yes, it's inconvenient. Sometimes women say, oh, I don't want to breastfeed. I don't like to have to organize my schedule. I don't want to pump, because for women that work, they may need to pump, but breastfeeding is best. And of course, if you're breastfeeding your baby, make sure you are giving that baby vitamin D supplementation. Again, women tell me, oh, I don't want to give my baby vitamin D supplements because that's not natural. Well, guess what? Unfortunately, breast milk has very little vitamin D. And yes, you want to get your kids out in the sun and everything, but supplement also to ensure that you're getting adequate vitamin D. And then after your cancer diagnosis, follow all the recommendations. Get your screening, get your mammograms. Some women tell me, oh, that I don't want the mammograms. I'm afraid of the radiation. I don't want to cause other cancers in my body from getting the radiation from the mammogram. Get your mammograms, because early diagnosis is one of the best markers for survival. And I'll stop there.
I thank you so much. A lot of times when we hear information about how we're to make these changes, nobody is there to say that there are certain substances in the foods that cause this in the body. And when you eat these other substances, then it changes something in the system. And that's one of the reasons that I really wanted you on, because you are a physician who's doing the research at Harvard, and they respect that place because it's recognized. So if a woman who's listening to you tonight literally wanted to make a change, what is one thing that you would recommend immediately?
I mean, one thing that's an easy, a low bar item is think about adding a plant-based meal once a week, where like they have the meat out Mondays. So, and then identify peer supporters. Let people know in your community, your network of friends, hey, I want to be healthier starting today. I want to be healthier. I want to include more fruits and veggies in my diet. I want to include less meat or decrease my meat consumption. I want to be more physically active. And of course, there are a lot of good resources. Dr. Funk just listed a host of resources that people can tap into. And in Boston, we have the Center for Community Wellness, where we do monthly conversations with people. We also have food access services that we provide, where we connect people with fresh produce around the city, and these organizations will deliver the food to your home if you're in the Boston area. So we're trying to address those food deserts. And of course, we do cooking classes at our center with the kids, and they're just wonderful resources. So when you're trying to make that change, think about, where can I get support? And one, your peers, but then reach out to these other wonderful organizations so that you have help along the journey. And then if you're spiritual, you reach out to God and say, God, I want you. This is my temple. I want to take good care of it. Whether I eat or drink, whatever I do, I want to give glory to God.
Excellent. Excellent. I'm so glad you came. I know you're going to stay by so that we can do some Q&A at the end. And it's interesting. I'm going to say this and then we're going to go. That the largest growing population of plant-based eaters in the country is African American.
Yeah.
I'm excited about that. Yeah, okay, stay by. Here we go to the next section.
Hi, I'm Mark McKinnon, and I play Derek Du Bois in the new BET Her film, The Waiting Room, which follows the lives of two women as they wait to hear if they have breast cancer and their journey after receiving a life-changing diagnosis. I've dedicated my role in this film to my grandmother, Laura McKinnon, who died of breast cancer. And I'm teaming up with the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine for Let's Beat Breast Cancer. This campaign centers on 4 simple lifestyle guidelines to reduce risk for breast cancer. Eat plant-based, stay active, limit alcohol, and maintain a healthy weight. Currently, 1 in 8 women are diagnosed with breast cancer during their lifetime. And breast cancer death rates are 40% higher among Black women than white women. We can do better. We can protect health and reduce risk by taking control of our habits and making positive changes. Do it for your mom, your grandmother, your sister, your daughter, your friends. Let's beat breast cancer.
Hello, let me tell you a story. I have a patient. Hello. Her name is Rachel Mann. And Rachel is a 49-year-old Black woman who is married to Don, and they have a beautiful 14-year-old daughter named Abrielle. Rachel is a flight attendant based here in Tampa, and she juggles work and family like many of us. With less coworkers because of COVID, her job has gotten grueling, flying from Tampa to LA, Seattle, Chicago, New York City. And now that the summer is here and things are opening up, more people are traveling. Some of them very aggressive. You've seen it on the news, people fighting on the plane. Needless to say, work has been stressful. Over the past 10 years, Rachel's been very good about getting her annual exams and controlling her diabetes. But the past 2 years have been crazy, right? Work more demanding. Abrielle hitting the terrible teens. And did I mention her elderly sick parents recently moved down from New York to live closer to their only daughter, leaving her 3 brothers in New York? As a result, Rachel's health has been on the back burner. Who are we kidding? It's not even on the stove. That is until she found a lump in her left breast while in the shower. That was a Sunday. She immediately got online and scheduled an appointment for Tuesday morning at 8 a.m. When I saw Rachel that Tuesday, she was nervous. I did a breast exam and confirmed the large, firm mass in the left upper outer quadrant and maybe something in her left axilla. Her last mammogram was over 2 years ago. I ordered a mammogram and ultrasound. Stephanie was able to schedule Rachel an appointment 2 p.m. the same day, and we scheduled her a follow-up appointment Friday morning at 9:20. I suggested to Rachel she bring Don. At her Friday appointment, I shared with Rachel and Don the results. A 1.5 by 2.1 by 1.8 mass with suspicious microcalcifications in the left upper outer quadrant and an abnormally enlarged lymph node in the left axillary tail, for which ultrasound-guided biopsies were recommended without further delay. They were stunned. It didn't make sense. No one in Rachel's family had any kind of cancer. Rachel was scheduled to fly out of Tampa tomorrow morning to LA, but I suggested she get the biopsies right away. And we scheduled another appointment with lab work. Rachel did get the biopsies promptly. Unfortunately, she had ER, PR positive, HER2 negative, invasive ductal carcinoma. When I saw her in the office, she was distraught. She did not want to have chemo or radiation, but Don felt she should do every reasonable treatment to stay alive. And then he said, the final decision is hers. So now she wasn't sure what to do. I shared with her the outcomes of several patients who were similar to her. Some had favorable outcomes and others are no longer alive. My suggestion was she and Don discuss her options with oncology as soon as possible, and she and I would work on creating a hostile environment to cancer in her body. Here's how Rachel's exam went. Her vital signs and labs showed that Rachel was 5.5 feet 4 inches and 169 pounds. Her BMI was 29. She was overweight and 1 point away from obesity. Rachel's glucose and hemoglobin A1C was 190 and 8.1. Her blood pressure was high, 136/87, and her cholesterol was also elevated at 237. Rachel does not smoke. She drinks socially, 1 or 2 glasses of wine per week. She gets 2 or 3 of the 16.9 ounce water bottles each day and gets about 5 hours of sleep each night. When she is home on the weekends, she and Don go for a walk around the lake close to their home. So, how does Rachel create a healthy environment for her body so she can beat cancer? First, Rachel should avoid first and secondhand smoke. Yes, Rachel doesn't smoke, but sometimes Don will smoke a cigar when he's relaxing on the lanai. They both know tobacco can cause cancer, but I reminded Rachel there is no safe amount of tobacco and encouraged her to encourage Don to make their home a cancer-free environment. Rachel looked apprehensive. Don loves his Cuban cigars. I told Rachel to tell Don if he wants her around, the cigars have got to go, period. Now, Rachel was a little upset and shocked when I told her she was basically overweight and fast approaching obesity. I also told her a BMI over 25, and she was 29, increases her risk for cancer. When she finally calmed down and apologized for accusing me of body shaming her, she immediately said, okay, those 40 pounds have got to go. And here is how she did it. Now, Rachel doesn't eat breakfast. She drinks it. She has coffee with sugar and cream when working, and if at home, she makes a spinach, banana, blueberry smoothie with whey protein powder. Lunch is usually a wrap or chicken sandwich with sweetened iced tea or water. Dinner around 7 or 8 p.m. is pasta with vegetables and chicken, or white rice with fish and vegetables, or sometimes pizza. In between meals, she snacks on popcorn or nuts or granola bars. Rachel is committed to getting this weight off. She feels she can eat 2 meals a day instead of grazing all day. She will eat as much as she wants of healthy food, so she's not starving. In between meals, she will drink water. There is no cumbersome diet to follow. There's no measuring, no weighing, no calculating, no recording. She just eats healthy foods, which are plants, whole plants. Healthy foods which aren't processed, like white rice and wheat bread and her beloved smoothies. Following this regimen, in 3 months, Rachel lost 20 pounds. Granted, she was getting chemo. But even after chemo was completed, Rachel lost an additional 20 pounds and has kept it off. Her BMI, a healthy 22.1. Now, Rachel's blood pressure was elevated, 136 over 87. We had talked in the past about her blood pressure being at the upper limit of normal, so she'd been checking it. Her BP app on her phone said she averages 132 over 84. I asked Rachel if she remembers what her blood pressure should be. She smiled and said less than 130 over 80. Rachel knows firsthand what uncontrolled hypertension can do. Miss Ruby, Rachel's mother, moved from New York to be close because she has severe heart failure. Rachel does not want to beat cancer, only to die prematurely from the #1 cause of death in the United States, heart disease. Here's how we lowered Rachel's blood pressure without drugs. Exercise. Currently, Rachel and Don walk 20 minutes on the weekends when she's home. I asked Rachel, do you have hypertension 2 days per week or 7? She quickly saw my point and agreed to add 5 weekdays by taking a brisk walk to her parents' house in the morning, when she checks on them anyway, instead of driving. When she's traveling, she will use the treadmill in the hotel. Water. Rachel may get 2 or 3 of those 16.9 ounce bottles of water a day. Only 51 ounces, when she should be drinking half her weight in ounces of water, which is 85 ounces, 169 divided by 2. Rachel has a 32-ounce water bottle she has never used. She feels she can get one done by 11 a.m., the second by 4 p.m., and most of the third by 8 p.m. to meet her water goal. Salt. Rachel is well aware that Africans are salt sensitive, and she shouldn't add any when she cooks or at the table, and eliminate food with hidden salt, like bread and poultry. Fortunately, Don does the cooking and doesn't cook with salt. But Rachel struggles with bread and pasta and chicken. She frequently gets wraps or sandwiches when traveling, but agreed to try bowls with tofu or black beans instead. Weight. Rachel was now motivated to lose the weight. The weight loss will also help lower her blood pressure. If Rachel is consistent She will lower her systolic blood pressure into the low 120s or even 110s without drugs. Rachel's diabetes is not well controlled. She was taking metformin and glimepiride with an A1C of 6.9%. She admits instead of taking the medication daily, she would skip several days to make the medication last longer. She now realizes that wasn't a good idea. I reminded Rachel that she should check her blood glucose like she checks her blood pressure. Then the 8.1 A1C would not have been a surprise. To get her blood glucose controlled quickly, Rachel agreed to take her medications appropriately. To get off the medications, Rachel and I looked at her diet again, but this time through our reverse diabetes lens. Rachel's breakfast was liquid, either coffee or a smoothie. Lunch was a sandwich with sweetened iced tea or water. Dinner was late, pizza or pasta or rice with chicken or fish and vegetables. She would snack throughout the day on popcorn, nuts, or granola bars. Rachel knows to avoid refined sugars like juice, soda, candy, cookies, ice cream, cakes. She thought smoothies and wraps and pasta and granola bars were healthy. I explained to her that her smoothie and wraps and granola bars were full of simple sugar. The important fiber in her spinach, blueberries, rice, and pasta were grounded or completely removed, which caused her blood sugar to spike. I showed Rachel this smoothie. It has almost 4 apples in there, plus other fruits. An apple has approximately 5 grams of fiber. So 5 times 4 is 20. Now this bottle says there are 4 servings per container. And each serving has 2 grams of fiber. So 2 times 4 is 8. 20 minus 8 is 12. Where did the 12 grams of fiber go? It got grounded up. So to lower your absorption of glucose, don't drink your fruits and vegetables, eat them. I reminded Rachel that eating a whole food plant-based diet rich in fiber will help her reach her blood sugar goals. Cream, milk, chicken, fish are like Snicker bars. Well, she reminded me that she was not going to be vegetarian. She is not ready to give up all animal protein, but is open to limiting how much she eats. So I agreed. We'll take that. Rachel agreed to commit to the following: limit animal protein to 1 meal per day, eat her fruits and vegetables, not drink them, and replace wine and sweetened iced tea with water. During her visit, she called Don, the resident chef, and he agreed to make dinner less processed and fiber nutrient rich. He's open to experimenting with legumes like black beans and lentils and chickpeas as a healthy protein source, cooking brown rice instead of white, making vegetable spirals instead of pasta, and eating dinner at 6 p.m. instead of 7 or 8 p.m. Rachel mentioned her elevated cholesterol of 237. It should be less than 200. I reminded Rachel the changes she was making for her diabetes, less animal protein, more dietary fiber, and exercise will help improve her cholesterol. So to recap, Rachel's new eating regimen was 2 meals per day, no snacking, no liquid food, animal protein at only 1 meal per day, and a brisk walk to mom and dad's house daily. Rachel felt these were realistic goals that she could accomplish. 3 months later, Rachel was back in the office. She was almost finished chemo and was scheduled for surgery the following month. Her weight was 154 pounds. Her average blood pressure was 122/74, down from 132/84. And her A1C was also down from 8.1 to 7.0. Rachel and I were thrilled with her progress. She felt pretty good despite chemotherapy and was motivated to make more changes in her lifestyle. Because she was committed and had been consistent, we stopped glimepiride. She'll continue to monitor her blood sugar, though, at home. 6 months later, I saw Rachel again. Because she didn't die from not having any animal protein at every meal, and because of the progress she had made, she agreed to eat animal protein just 2 or 3 times per week, have a glass of wine only on special occasions, and go for a 15-minute digestive walk. That's a walk after her meals to lower her blood sugar even further. 1 year after Rachel was diagnosed with cancer, Rachel is cancer-free. She loves her 140-pound self. She lost weight because of chemo, yes, and dietary changes, but has been successful in not gaining the weight back. Her average blood pressure is 115/68, and her A1C is 5.8 on no medications. Cancer scared Rachel, but she used her fear of dying to motivate her to change her life. And that change not only affected her, but has impacted folks around her. Don and Abrielle are healthier too. The moral of this story is live. Don't fight and beat cancer only to die prematurely of heart disease or diabetes or stress. Don't just manage diabetes. Why not reverse it? Don't just settle for being on drugs for the rest of your life. If you want to make lifestyle changes and all your doctors do is push drugs, look for doctors that offer something better. Whatever you do, you take control. Don't let your taste buds or your family or your friends, the latest trends or social media dictate if you are going to be healthy. My last word from the word is a promise to hold on to, and hopefully you will choose to live by. I come that you will have life, and you will have life more abundantly.
Faith, I put in the private chat, I want you to be my doctor.
I can't hear you, Donna.
No? Can you hear me now? I put in the private chat that I want Faith Felder to be my doctor. So
there we go. Now I can hear you. Yes.
I put in the private chat, I want Faith Felder to be my doctor. I want you to stay around because we're definitely going to have some Q&A at the end. And I'm sure that Deidre is pulling those questions together. Thank you not only for this information, but because you are my friend, I know that you don't just say this, you practice it. And Jackie and I want to be like you and we grow up. Okay, we're going on to the next thing, but stay around so that you can be back for the Q&A at the end.
Will do, will do.
Thanks so much.
Hello, hello. I'm guessing you have some questions for me. I'm only seeing myself on the screen right now.
He'll add me. Here I am.
All right.
Listen, I'm so glad you're here. I have never sat in your chair in your office, but I sit in your chair online and I listen to you and I do what you say. And you are in private practice with your husband, and our family is being blessed by your professional ability to help us get to the bottom of the things that are challenging us, that so many of us have carried for generation. And I wanted you to be on today because in the last 25 years, every breast cancer patient that I have met and become involved, friends with, or already knew has had some type of stress going on in their lives. And I know that we often talk about eating better and exercising, which are vital. But as a public health educator, I believe that a lot of us make poor choices. We know it's not good to smoke. We know it's not good to drink, especially to excess. We know it's not good to be overweight. But all of us are facing this list of things that helps us to seek comfort in things that aren't good for us, that then lend itself to developing diseases that can kill us. So what I want to address with you today is stress and trauma and how that can impact our lives. What, from your perspective as a psychotherapist, qualifies as trauma versus stress?
Yeah, so we all have stressors, right? We all have things that can lead to stress in our life. Stress is really the reaction that we have to stressors, right? So stressors are any of the things that can cause any type of disruption, or it doesn't necessarily even have to cause disruption. A stressor can be the loss of a pet, or it can be the loss of a job. Loss is usually a huge stressor in people's lives. And so loss is one of those things that can cause stress, but how we react to things is really whether or not we are stressed out or we experience stress. Trauma in general, when we're talking about trauma, and there's of course the textbook definitions out there that anyone can Google, but when you're talking about trauma, you're talking about experiencing something that is negative, experiencing something that is so negative that there might not be immediate healing for what it is you've experienced. And so I kind of give the example of if you prick your finger with a pin. That might be a little bit of trauma to your finger, but generally there is immediate healing that is available for that pinprick, right? You're not going to bleed all night, most likely, unless you have some predisposing factors that will cause you to continue to have trauma there, right? But if you have, like, for example, when I decided I would get all of these different kitchen gadgets because I was doing all of this cooking because I was home a little more during this pandemic, and I slapped my hand down on one of these little chop things, and I don't know what I was thinking, but it cut my hand down to the bone. That was a more significant trauma. So that wasn't just a little stressor. That wasn't a pinprick. That was something where the healing was not immediately available. And in fact, another sign, I think, of trauma is how much is it affecting you in other areas afterward, right? So then not only did I slam my finger down on there, but I developed what I believe is some post-traumatic arthritis. The finger is still a little stiff to bend, and it's still it takes a little bit to get it going in the mornings. That was not there before I slammed my finger down on that thing and caused this trauma to myself, right? And so how is trauma affecting your relationships? That's one of the things that I often will look at. How are your relationships impacted by this experience? So that's kind of a way to kind of gauge whether or not you've experienced trauma.
So one of the first ladies that I met after my breast cancer diagnosis was another woman who had breast cancer. And when she discovered it, it was end stage. She was having bone pain and couldn't explain it. They did all the testings and discovered that it was metastatic breast cancer to the bone. And she was struggling, of course, and trying to figure stuff out. And I got to be her friend, and we were talking about some stuff, and she began to have to make end of life stuff because she was nearer to death than we ever imagined. And the one thing that she said to me was that her spouse was abusive. And my heart broke because I learned that a lot of times when women are diagnosed with breast cancer, their significant other leaves them. And I was fortunate enough to have a husband and a family and a circle of friends that surrounded me. My son's little Bible school class, I got to church one day and there was a box full of cards for me. And so I had that cup of joy. How does abuse, because how does abuse impact your health when you're in a situation like that, because she needed him to help her because she was dying, but she didn't need him to abuse her at the same time.
Absolutely. And so I will take it even a little further back, that oftentimes it's not even just abuse at that time, but abuse that you might have experienced prior, right? And so how does abuse impact that? Well, we know that trauma, especially consistent trauma, something that is chronic, something that is going on over time, is actually going to cause much more negative health outcomes. We know that if you have something that is causing stress in your life, you are going to have much less resources to even heal. You will have much less cognitive resources. Your body will have, it's kind of like when you're sick and you're maybe a little more snippy with people, you just don't have as many cognitive resources. Like I tell people, even when I'm accepting engagements, I'm like, no, I can't do that because then I won't be able to be nice to my children and my husband. Like, I just won't have the cognitive resources to do it, right? And so imagine if somebody is not only accepting too many engagements, but they're actually being abused. They're actually experiencing chronic trauma. Chronic trauma actually changes the structure of your brain. So it changes how you metabolize things. It changes how, because it's telling your body, hey, we're in fight or flight mode. We are in danger right now. And so we don't have time to tend to the little harm that's going on right here. We have to figure out how we're going to survive this situation, right? And so when you're experiencing trauma, your body is in fight or flight mode. And that is a terrible place to be for healing anything in your body.
So I don't know if you heard the segment when I said that my mom was from that generation where going to the doctor for stuff wasn't. And I can remember as a child watching them go through some changes, and my dad wanted to go to therapy, but my mother was against it up until the day she died. That just was not her thing. Why do Black people have such a hard time facing their trauma and getting help for it? And I want to say this before you answer, because I know a lot of times we spiritualize a lot of stuff, but I have come to believe if you look closely at Jesus in the Bible, he was doing the work that you're doing. And the examples that I like to give are the woman at the well. He got in her stuff. When the rich young ruler came to him, he made some suggestions for him if he wanted to have a better life. And then Nicodemus was in such a place that he had to come to God, Jesus at night, but Jesus did the work with him. And then he's walking down the street and he sees Lazarus. He's like, come down, I need to go to your house and talk. And I don't think we give him enough credit for doing that work. We just look on the miracle side. So what prevents us from getting this help that you and professionals like you provide to us?
Yeah, so there are several reasons. And I will tell you that not only was Jesus doing the work, but Jesus was calling and commissioning those around him to do the work.
Yes.
An example that I often use is Lazarus, how Jesus called Lazarus up out of the tomb and brought him back to life. But what did Jesus do when Lazarus came out of the tomb? He commissioned those around him to unbind him, right?
Go.
Yes. And so many of us have been commissioned to help unbind people. Yes, only Jesus can bring life. Only Jesus can bring you back from the dead. But so many of us are called to help unbind people who are bound. And so we ought to be using those skills and using the people who are around us who are commissioned to do exactly that. So that's one of the things that I try to help Christians understand. And then also, in addition to just unbinding people, we have people who are skilled to not just unbind people, but to actually bring healing into people's lives. And oftentimes we skip over that, and you say, we will often spiritualize things. I'll tell you, I'm getting to the point in my life and in my studying where if you are not paying very close attention to colonialism, how colonizers have impacted the medical system, how patriarchy has impacted the medical system, right? If you're not paying attention to those things, I'm really probably not even like paying that much attention to what you're saying about stuff, because it's like, okay, let's be real. The reason that Black people oftentimes do not go to doctors is because this country has a very deep and steep history of medical racism that is still alive and well today. Remember Serena Williams? Serena Williams had these blood clots. She had to go and pull rank and let them know, listen, I am Serena Williams, because she was telling them, listen, I'm having a hard time breathing. Guess what? She had blood clots. She would have died if she did not go and pull rank and say, I'm Serena Williams. all of us can't be Serena Williams. And so we sit there sometimes, we go to the hospital and we get our needs ignored, and they're not really taken as seriously as oftentimes our white counterparts. And so that's one of the things that kind of deters people from going to the doctor. Of course, the history of medical racism, of course, the history in this country of just marginalized, like, you know, not caring about the marginalized people in the first place. And as Dr. Funk was talking about, you know, the fact that, you know, there are these disparities, right, between the Black communities and white communities, and when the cancer is found and whatnot, right? You were talking about this person who was experiencing pain in their bones before they went in to find out what it is that's going on, right? And we are often taught that we have to carry these burdens. And if you're in a little pain, that's fine. Get up and go. You better get up and go to work. Like you still have a family to take care of and a community to take care of and all of these different things, work. And some of that was literally institutionalized, okay? Like there were places that made laws that Black women could not just sit home, you know, during the war because white women wanted someone to take care of their family, right? And so we have to recognize that this has been ingrained from generation to generation. Work, and work real hard, and you'll make it. And working real hard will never get us out of the situation that we're in. We have to address some of those structural changes. So I understand why people don't go to the doctor as much. I definitely see it, and I understand why it's passed down. I mean, think about it from slavery. There are literally, there was a benefit to not going out and telling your business if you're in pain. And if you're like, that's going to be a problem. You might get killed if you say that you're in pain because you're no longer a useful person who's been enslaved, right? And so there are a lot of reasons why Black people do not go to the doctor. I understand that. It's just a matter of now, okay, trying to educate our people and also trying to dismantle some of those structural things where, there are medical doctors who believe that Black people have a higher pain tolerance and their skin is thicker and all of these silly things. And these are people who've gone to med school, right? And so for people who are not as educated in those things to maybe have some reservations and not be able to put two and two together that they need to go and do preventative health care, I get it.
So quickly, 3 things that you would suggest to women to do to help them move through this trauma that they're facing and all of the points that you just made with the systems that they're trying to access. 3 things they can do.
So I'm always going to recommend therapy. I will be a broken record on that probably until the day I die. And I am not simply a broken record on that from being biased as a therapist, but from the other side of the couch. I have had good therapy, and that is why I think I could be a good therapist in the first place. But also, it's just like therapy. And, I was sitting in a meeting one time, and this lady said, "What about people like me who will never go to therapy?" And I was like, you might as well tell me, what about people like me who will never go to the doctor? Chances are you will probably not recover in the way that somebody who is willing to go to the doctor and somebody who's willing to go to therapy. And so therapy is the first and foremost thing that I would definitely recommend. Go to your doctor, your medical doctor. Find someone that you are comfortable with. If you are not comfortable with the first person that you go to, there are thousands of doctors around that you can choose from, okay? Especially now where people are doing a lot of teletherapy, and I will give that pointer for both therapists and medical doctors. Now sometimes you can see somebody anywhere in the state, because for therapists, we are licensed by state. So that means anyone in Alabama, we're in Alabama, right? Anyone in Alabama, as long as you're willing to continue doing teletherapy with them, you can see anyone. So you do not have to be beholden just to the small area that you are in, okay? So definitely see a therapist. Definitely talk to your medical doctor, because there might be medical things going on. Oftentimes when people come to me with an issue with depression or anxiety, if it's low-grade depression or anxiety, the first thing I will tell them to do is have their hormones and their vitamins checked at the doctor's office. Because heaven forbid you get on Prozac and you just needed some vitamin D or you needed some vitamin B, right? And it'll probably help a little bit, but we're not even addressing the main issue, why you're feeling a little down or why your emotions are up and down and all over the place. Our hormones and our vitamins are very huge to that. And then the next thing, see a therapist, see your doctor, and be intentional about the changes, the legacy you're leaving for the next generation. What do I mean by that? We don't have probably a whole bunch of time to get into it, and I think you're probably going to get into it some, but the whole idea of epigenetics and epigenetic research, this is talking about the things that we pass down on our genetic material. It's not necessarily that we're changing the DNA, but we're changing the way the DNA is expressed. So for example, and I'll give an animal example so you can understand. In New Zealand, there are very few birds that fly. Why? Because there are less of the ground predators. And so over time, the birds have lost their ability to fly, like kiwi birds, and like they're just like run around on the ground because they don't have a predator. That's just something that has changed as far as over time, over generation to generation. They got little nubs, and then eventually they had no wings and they do not fly. Same thing happens with us. Because of our environment, because of our experiences, our genetics start to say, okay, we don't need this, or we do need that, right? You were talking about, I think you mentioned, stress and cancer, but at least it was playing in my mind that way. When we think about stress and cancer, and we think about how cancer, I love what Dr. Funk, I think it was, who said that sometimes cancer is not there to kill you, but it is there to change you. Yes. Okay, so what happens when you have this stress that you're passing down from generation to generation to generation? Your body and your DNA and your genetics are like, listen, we have to make a serious change or we are going to die. And so if that means inflammation so that you slow down, inflammation so that you get cancer and you have to make some changes, that's exactly what your body will do to ultimately save your life. And so think about the legacy that you are leaving for the next generation. And this is whether you have children or not, because we're talking about environment. We're not simply talking about your genes being passed. We're talking about what environment are you creating? And so that's how you start addressing some of the systemic changes. That's how you start saying, listen, justice is not just about me. It's about the legacy that I am leaving, right? So paying attention to what it is you're doing for the next generation. And that will include the way that you eat. That will include the way that you talk to people. That will include whether or not you forgive. That will include all of these things that really impact our functioning.
Okay, so we're going to stop here and hope you stay around so you can come back for the Q&A. I've already seen a couple questions that I know that you want to be a part of. And then put a pin in the epigenetics, because that is really, really something that intrigues me and is very, very, very important in overcoming disease. We'll be back in just a second. And thank you so much. I've had a session with Dr. D.
Glad to be here. Thank you.
Hey man, look, my name is Chef Chew, and as I always say, going to give you something to chew on. Well, today, man, I wanted to come to you all just to tell you all that I love you, number one. But I want to tell you a little bit about my personal story. People always ask me and say, Chef Chew, man, how did you become a vegan? And I tell them, man, it was a journey. I mean, I started out, I'm a country boy, man. I grew up eating fried chicken, ribs, pork chops, ham. I mean, I was one generation away from eating possum. I mean, that's how country we were. And so, when I grew up, man, I had the privilege of actually having all this meat, but at the same time being exposed to vegetarianism at a young age. I grew up around Seventh Adventists, and they had this lifestyle of eating plant-based foods, and I actually was exposed to eating, again, vegetarian meat. I'm talking like 1991, 1992. I got exposed to vegetarianism at a young age. But at the same time, I was eating the ribs, the pork chops, the ham. But amazingly, at that time, in about 2001, I started recognizing a pattern in my family. Many people in my family were dying prematurely, coming up with diabetes, heart disease, cancer. All these things were coming upon our family. It was generational. And I made a tough decision. I mean, a very tough decision. I mean, I love the fried chicken, y'all. You don't understand. I mean, I ate 20 pieces at a time, 50 pieces at a time. That was me. But I made a decision, man, early on to go vegan. But when I went vegan, I mean, I was missing my chicken. I was missing the ribs. I was missing the pork chops, missing the ham. So I said to myself, I got to figure out how in the world, how can I make this stuff taste like I remember? So as a chef, I literally went into the kitchen and I went through thousands of experiments. I'm not exaggerating, thousands of experiments. And I learned some things. I tell you, I had to have been God, because there was nowhere in the world. I wasn't a scientist. I don't got no background and all this stuff. But somehow, man, God began to show me some things that just blew my mind. I learned the secrets of why we love meat so much. And I discovered that eating meat was an experience. I mean, an experience. We know about that experience. That experience involves three amazing factors. The texture. I learned that we love meat because we love that texture, man. We love that chew, that bite. We love that taste. It gotta taste good, that flavor. You know what I'm saying? That garlic powder and that onions and all that kind of stuff, caramelized, you know what I'm saying? We love all of that. And I also learned that it had to look good. The appearance also made a big difference. And so for me, man, I started learning that, you can actually eat healthy. It can taste good. It can make you feel good. And I started learning that if I can make this food for other people, I can change the cycle of premature death for generations to come. So I'm here today to tell y'all, man, you know, as we go through this journey, I'm just want to let y'all know that Chef Chew, my journey is all about the people, about the community. We trying to change lives one chew at a time. So I'm telling y'all, man, I love y'all out there. My name is Chef Chew. And as I always say, going to give you something to chew on.
Okay, I put on my apron because we're getting ready to cook up some good health. One of the things that you have definitely noticed from all our presenters, MDs, PhDs, MPHs, RDs, they're doing the science that explains that what we eat can change our health. In the last segment, in talking to Dr. D, she talked about epigenetics. And when we talk about epigenetics, it's the epidemiology of genetics. My best friend, Joanne Dixon Smith, is an epidemiologist. She had that chemistry medicine brain. But simply put, the choices that we make can turn on genes or turn them off. There was a study that was done with Africans and African Americans. The Africans traditionally eat a diet that's high in plant foods. The African Americans eat that other stuff. So what they did was to check their intestines to see what was going on around cancer. And the Africans did not have any indication of it, but the African Americans did. And so they asked them if they would be willing to switch their diets for about 2 weeks, which is like 10 days, like Daniel and the Three Hebrew Boys. And they ate each other's cultural diet for 10 days. At the end of the 10 days, at the end of this time, they checked the African Americans' intestines, no indication of cancer. They checked the Africans' intestines, there was indication of cancer. And so what the science is now confirming, that we may be born with the propensity towards something, but if we make better choices, we have better outcomes. So after my diagnosis, I went from lacto-ovo vegetarian to totally 100% whole food plant-based dieting. And my husband and son were on board, but they were a little concerned about what we were going to do. And what I like to do with people is meet them where they are. We hear a whole lot about whole food plant-based, which is meaning literally you're eating whole foods, not all that processed stuff. But I was at a Kroger in Atlanta doing a cooking class, and this woman was ready to do this. And her husband looked at her and said, "What am I supposed to have for lunch?" And she said, "What do you mean?" "Well, you know, I need to have some kind of sandwich for lunch." And so I'm listening to them. And while I know, ideally, and I think this is what Dr. Faith Felder was saying, she was meeting her patients where they were. She wasn't ready to be vegetarian 100%. She didn't want to give up all the wine. So Dr. Felder worked with her where she was. And that's what I did. I took that man and his wife in that Kroger in Atlanta over to the frozen food section where there was some vegetarian meat slices that he could put on his sandwich. And immediately he was ready to do it. And so meet people where they are. If you have a garden like we do, you can garden your stuff and bring it in the house. If you don't have a garden and you live in the inner city where there are food deserts, you're not going to be able to do everything the way that it's recommended from the professionals. But if you look into your culture, and that's what I was asking Dr. Funk, what about collard greens and cabbage and kale? Those things are as healthy for us as broccoli, and they're a part of what we like to eat. So what I did with my family was to start out with the things that they liked. We took all the milk and cheese and eggs and butter and all that out, but we were a pizza-eating group of people. And so we had to find a way to make pizza because we weren't ready to get rid of it. And fortunately, over the last 25 years, they've come up with some other stuff that's really good. In addition to that, I looked at the other dishes that we like to eat. And in our culture, Sunday breakfast is a big deal where you have grits and potatoes and eggs and all that meat and everything. And when I was working for the Georgia Extension Service, we used to have a Christmas party, and my boss used to make these angel biscuits, and then she would make this cream sauce to go over it that was made with mushroom soup and I think cream of celery soup. And then she'd have all these veggies floating in it, and ham and sausage and stuff. And there are a few of us who are vegetarian on the staff, so she would make a vegetarian version for us. Well, my mom and daddy grew up eating cream chip beef on toast. And that was something that was important to them. And so when you're making these changes, you don't have to just take away everything that you've eaten. You can find healthier versions of it. And so my husband enjoys this creamy mixture that I'm going to show you now that you can make very easily and cook it and serve it over biscuits. And let me tell you, it's real easy to make. So one of the things that I discovered when I became more plant-based was that nuts, and there are some schools of thought that don't eat any nuts at all. But again, I'm a graduate of Loma Linda University, where it's the home of the Adventist Health Study, where a lot of the information that people are now using in their programs, it started out there at Loma Linda. And they compared their scientific findings to what they understand God wants them to do. And you're probably familiar with Loma Linda being one of those healthy communities around the world where these people live the longest. And a recent study that was added to what they were originally doing. When I was a grad student out there, my roommate was involved in the collection of the data and all that sort of stuff. And then recently they've done another study that included African Americans. And in that study, the African Americans who were part of the Seventh-day Adventist group literally were the healthiest people of all. And so they understand fruits, nuts, grains, and vegetables are okay to eat. And I remember years ago when I was in college, they used to tell us that avocados were not good. And I know Caribbeans eat up some avocados, and then they discovered that they were healthy. So make your own decision on that. But I discovered that you can take a nut like a cashew, which is the fruit of a tree, and put it in your blender and blend it up with some water in it. And you can use it as a base, as if you were using a cream of mushroom soup or a cream of celery soup. So what I'm going to do is add about a cup of water to this. And I'm going to put this in my blender to get it started. And then we're going to make some creamy sauce to go over these biscuits that I'm going to show you real quickly. Okay. Okay, so that's mixed now. And what I'm going to do next is add some more water to it. You always start out with a small amount of water so that you're able to get it nice and smooth first, and there aren't a lot of bits and pieces running in it. And then you add more water and blend it up again. I'm fortunate to have one of these machines, which is like magic. But if you are in a situation where you can't get one of these, what I thought about all this last year, we didn't go to the hairdresser like we used to. So if you count up all the money you saved going to the hairdresser, you could probably afford a Vitamix. If you can't get one, then get one of the highest ends that you can afford. And if you can only get one that is less expensive, then you just have to be a little more careful when you use it or you will burn it out. I'm literally going to take this and put it in my pot, and I'm going to let it start to thicken. And this is going to make some cream sauce that we're going to put over biscuits. Now, I have already chopped up onions, mushrooms, bell pepper. We know how onion is good for cholesterol, cancer, everything. The bell peppers are especially good for heart disease. We're discovering that the mushrooms, when exposed to the sun, actually absorb some vitamin D. That was new to me. And they're excellent in fighting cancer as well. Well, this would be great for a person who is on a totally whole food, plant-based diet. But if you were my daddy, he would be looking for some chick beef in there. And so one of our sponsors, Chef Chea, has been producing these amazing dishes. And he's got a shredded steak, a shredded chicken, and a fried chicken. And most of his ingredients are either soybeans or garbanzo beans. And I can't think of the third ingredient that he's using that are non-GMO. And this looks like shredded steak. And I remember my parents had a restaurant. They used to make this sandwich called the Chef Special. If you all remember that, anybody who's watching, I think I have found the secret again to be able to make those for you. So as this starts to thicken, we're going to then add these other ingredients to them and just let them simmer. The way that you want to do after you put them in is now to add seasonings. And that is the secret when you go from a meat-based diet to a plant-based diet. Leave the meat, but bring the seasonings. And you know, in our culture, we talk about we don't always measure everything because we don't never know how many people are going to be at the house. And we just kind of shake until the ancestors tell us to stop shaking. And I can hear my mother in my head, no, Donnie, you need a little more of this or a little less of that. Some of the things that I like to recommend, of course, you're familiar with: garlic powder, onion powder, celery, bell peppers, basic to everything. Then you want to find something that mimics bouillon, chicken bouillon, beef bouillon, and there are a number of products. I really like to use McKay's chicken style seasoning. They have a vegan version of that. And then there is a company called Orrington Farms that makes broth bases as well. And then I have totally fallen in love with the Better Than Bouillon, who has a mushroom and I want to say a vegetable, and then they have a not chicken and a not beef that you can use also. I like to use Bragg's instead of soy sauce. I don't do the vinegar because vinegar is fermented like alcohol, and I just don't use it. And if you want to add some more beefiness and color, then you can use Kitchen Bouquet, which also gives a lot of good flavor. It's been a joy for me to do this and experiment. When I was teaching college here in Huntsville at Oakwood University, I used to have my students over and they would let me know if it was good or not. And one of the classes that I taught was a very, very popular class. In addition to this sort of stuff, take some of your old recipes and change them. Dr. D was talking about generational stuff. Find some of Big Mama's stuff and learn how to make a healthier version of it. When Dr. Funk talked about collards and cabbage and stuff, you want that same flavor. You want to find something called smoke. Don't go from pork to turkey necks. Leave all of that outside. Get you some bacon or some liquid smoke or some smoked paprika, which is going to give you the smell of the smoke that are in your beans and your cabbage and your collards. If you use any oil at all, a little olive oil will help. And then you can use some of your seasonings that is like the chicken bouillon. And every time we have made this, when I lived in Atlanta, the other places I live, it's always been a hit. I have written 3 books. The first one, something to shout about, is my journey with breast cancer, tips on healthy living, and the first 100 recipes that I did when I first became plant-based. The second book came out of my experience in Atlanta, working at Morehouse School of Medicine, where people there were like, okay, Donna, we need some mac and cheese, we need some banana pudding, because some of the things that I was recommending to them were outside of what they culturally did, and they wanted some cultural comfort foods that were healthy for them. And so we created that book, and my brother Anthony Perkins helped me to produce a cooking show that goes with that, which is on our YouTube channel. And very recently, I've written an ebook called Still Cooking Up Good Health that you can order from our website. And those of you who registered should have gotten an email today with all that information in there. One of the beauties of learning how to do this is that you meet other people who do the same thing. We were supposed to have 2 other guests with us tonight. Cynthia, Chea, Pean is down in New Orleans serving as a personal vegan chef for somebody who's a celebrity. And so we're letting her off the hook. But you need to look her up, and I'm sure that Deidre can put information in the chat about her. And joining me now is Heather from Birmingham, Alabama. And she is also a plant-based chef. But the beauty of Heather is that she's a mom of children who all have allergies. And I'm telling you, first when you try to eat plant-based, then you add in allergies, it's a real challenge. Hey, Heather.
Hi, Donna.
I'm so glad you're here. I'm so glad you're here. Tell
Thanks
us
for having me.
For you to cook for a family who has allergies and are plant-based.
Can you say that again? I missed the first half of it.
How is it that you are able to cook for a family who is plant-based and has food allergies? Is it difficult? How are you able to manage it?
At times it's difficult, but it is by the grace of God. It is by the grace of God. And you know, God just has a wonderful sense of humor, but he never gives us more than we can handle. And it's true. You know, he never just puts us out there and doesn't give us some kind of rescue or a way of escape. And so I feel like he was equipping me my whole life for this very moment of having to take care of 4 kids with food allergies.
Okay.
So Yeah, I discovered with my first kid that he, at about 4 weeks, he was covered head to toe in the worst eczema that I'd ever seen him. First of all, I had never seen eczema.
Eczema like that.
And so I was nursing him, and about 9 months, it just wouldn't get better. So they told me, stop nursing him. It's probably something that something that you're eating that's probably causing him to break out. And so when he was old enough to get tested for food allergies, we did that and discovered a multitude of food allergies that he had that were life-threatening. And then we had 3 more kids after that, and they all had the same, or still have the same challenges.
So the blessing is
but
that you
the humor in it is that not the humor, but the relief. Most of my whole life, my mom has been vegan. My mom is almost 80 years old, and I wish she didn't have something on her head. I'd make her come to the camera and say hi. But she is a testimony.
So Heather, it sounds like the trial of your faith.
So it goes in and out. I don't know if it's my internet, but yes. So I've had to. It was ironic that their food allergies were things that would render them. Can you hear me?
It's coming in and out, but I can hear you. Keep going.
Yeah, it's going in and out over here too. He is faithful, and I believe that these food allergies, although they are, life-threatening and they are serious, God has allowed me, and He just to be able to cook and learn how to do things that would keep them safe. And I like everything that I've been hearing. I wish that I had been listening the entire time, but because I have 4 kids, I've had to skip in and out and come back when it's my time. But
okay, so what are you going to show us that you're making tonight? What are you making tonight?
So I am making a mushroom, it's a mushroom pasta, mushroom tomato, sun-dried tomato pasta. And I picked these ingredients to help you celebrate because I was looking for things that are wonderful ingredients to help fight cancer.
Right.
So the first thing that I'm gonna do is I have some sun-dried tomatoes here, and they are in oil. I like to buy the ones that are already in a little bit of olive oil. And so what we're gonna do is get a pan on, and instead of doing some olive oil, I'm just gonna put those sun-dried tomatoes right in my pan.
Okay.
And we'll use the oil from that. I also have, now tomatoes have so many antioxidants. The lycopene of tomatoes helps to reduce heart disease and cancer. And so many people debate whether tomatoes are a fruit or a vegetable. But one fact that remains is that it definitely is packed with vitamin C, A, E, and K, and all of those things are cancer fighters. So we're gonna start there. I have some sun-dried tomatoes for the flavor. This is a dish that you can do any time of the year. It's just yummy and it's kind of creamy, but it's all gonna be plant-based. So we're gonna replace some of that cream that we would miss when it was cheese, okay? Because my kids are allergic to cheese. And then I'm gonna go in with, this is super, super garlicky. I love garlic. I think garlic is amazing. When I'm sick, if my kids are sick, I'm trying to sneak garlic in even more than we eat on a normal basis. So I have about 6. Makes everything taste better, right?
Yes, honey, I cook with it, but my husband is like, it needs more garlic. I'm like, you haven't even tasted it yet. What are you talking about? And last year, Heather, we grew garlic in our garden. It was the best thing. The bulbs, and so when we pulled it, is it gonna taste like garlic? I'm like, yeah, you planted garlic. It's gonna taste like. So we gathered it and tied it up, and we put it out in the garage and let it dry. And we're probably down to the last couple bulbs of garlic now.
Oh my goodness! Did it taste different from the one in the store?
It tasted clean to me.
Yeah.
And then I started roasting a lot of it, And like when I made tomato basil soup, I would roast it in the oven, and then it would just pop out, and it had a sweetness to it that it didn't have in the grocery store.
Oh man, I may have to grow some basil, some garlic. And then the next thing I have are some shallots. Shallots are really a part of the alum family of all the rest of the onions and garlics and green onions. But they have they're intense in their flavor. But there are some people who don't like onions can tolerate them better because they're less pungent, I think. But still pack that same flavor. Like when I was cutting it up, it made my eyes water. And they're pretty. They're purple looking. They help to reduce inflammation. Who doesn't want to help reduce inflammation in their body? And then I was reading something about onions and shallots in particular, that they are really cancer fighters. They are excellent at killing.
Yes. They help to shrink tumors. They literally help to shrink tumors.
Cells. Do not. I find ways to include them in every. They are at the base of. Not turn it up too high. I don't know if you can.
Okay, so she's coming back in. Hopefully we can get her back in so that you can hear. I want to see this dish. Yes. It looks like it's frozen, perhaps. Okay. Yes, so what I'm going to do, I'm coming up here because I want you all to see these biscuits that I made. And let me tell you, these biscuits are regular quick biscuits. You don't have to do anything special with them. You substitute a plant-based margarine, a plant-based milk, roll those suckers out and keep folding them to incorporate the layers in there. Pop them in the oven and you have hot biscuits. Let me get the biscuits to put on this plate for you so that you can see how this tastes. The gravy is amazing. If you decide to get one of the books, there is in the recipe book another recipe for angel biscuits. And my niece Cheryl thinks they're the best biscuits in the world, but her Uncle Eddie won't let her have any because he likes to eat them all up. So these are the quick biscuits that I usually make. And what I'm going to do now is go and pop one of them open and pour some of this sauce on top of it so that you can see. I don't know that we're going to get Heather back or not. This has thickened up. It's so yummy. And all I seasoned this one with was some garlic and some of that chicken bouillon. And I'm going to dip this up and put it over the biscuit. And that would be a good thing to have for breakfast. And you know, another thing that I have found is I have looked at African-American, Caribbean-American culture. We traditionally didn't eat stuff like eggs and bacon and stuff for breakfast. We ate what the Caribbeans call ground provisions, which were foods that were high complex carbohydrates that stayed with us all day. And in our culture, my grandmother was a domestic, so she had to eat so that she could make it through the day. Okay, here we go. I'm gonna dip in here, and I want to holler out Chef Chea for this amazing steak that's going inside of this and how delicious it is. If you don't want to eat any of these products at all, you could just use mushrooms instead, or you could use that jackfruit to put on there. Okay, I'm coming around to see this. Doesn't that look amazing? Couldn't you eat that for breakfast? You don't have to worry about cholesterol, saturated fat, because you ground up the whole nut. There's fiber in there. And there were some studies at Loma Linda that were done by Joan Sabate that suggest these nuts are amazing in helping to fight heart disease. So yeah, that looks really, really good. Okay, you back, Heather? Maybe she's back. We'll see. Can't hear you. Are you back on mute? Yum, yum, yum. Trying to find it.
Okay.
Okay, I hear you now.
I'll just go quickly. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead and move.
So I've added to this I have sun-dried tomatoes, shallots, garlic, and I just put a bunch of fresh parsley in my pan. And I'm sauteing all of this. While I do that, I want this to be really creamy. So I'm going for a cream thing, but my kids are allergic to all nuts. They can't do any nuts. So alternatively, we do pea milk.
Yes.
Pea milk. So this one is pretty creamy to me. They can do, some of them can do soy and some of them cannot. So I've got 2.5 cups here of some pea milk, and I'm going to add a little bit of cornstarch to it because this is going to be our...
That's how it thickens it.
Yes, it's going to be our thickener. And I'm going to add something that I absolutely love that creates a natural cheesy flavor, but that's awesome, packed with B12. This is...
nutritional yeast.
Yes. And I've added a lot to this, so I'm just going to whisk this in my... Before I...
Girl, we need to meet halfway between Birmingham and Huntsville and exchange some dishes.
Yes, ma'am. It's not too far.
No. And I hope that those of you who are watching see how easy this is. We just took regular stuff that our families like and adjusted it to plant-powered and plant-powered allergy-friendly. So for people, my girlfriend Glenda does a lot of allergy stuff. So you could use the pea milk. Could they do coconut milk?
You could do coconut milk. This would actually be very delicious with coconut milk.
Rice milk or oat milk will probably work too.
Yes.
So you have plenty of options.
I like this pea milk because it seems to be fattier to me.
Yes.
And so for this one, I want it to be creamy. And
it looks so good.
In a second, so I'm going to do TV magic, but I also, for a little bit more of a flavor of the cheesiness, I'm going to add a little bit of lemon juice into my sauce here. And you can add a pinch of salt. I am low on putting salt in things and adding
so am I.
I try to do it afterwards because you just don't want to be piling salt on salt
on
salt.
Right.
And so this is going to thicken up, and this is going to turn into this beautiful sauce that I'm trying desperately not to split that I did earlier. And if my husband would move the camera, then I can show you what it will look like. Look at that creamy sauce.
Yes.
It is magnificent. My family loves it. And
it was amazing. It was amazing to me to learn that you didn't have to do butter and flour. You could use these plants that already have the fiber in them that are going to help them. Yeah.
Absolutely. And then to make it just to add some I'm going to add some spinach right into my pot.
Oh, that looks good.
I'm going to add spinach into it. And I'm taking the time to roast some mushrooms. Mushrooms are our friends. So before I started, I put these mushrooms. These are baby Bella mushrooms. I just chopped up a bunch of garlic. This is super, super garlicky. Garlic and parsley. And I put some of the smoke that you were talking about. Even in this sauce, I did add a little bit of that bacon because I wanted that smoky tasting, kind of cheesy flavor going here. And it is incredible. And now I'm just going to plate it and show you how we do it. You can use there's so many varieties if you have a gluten intolerance or if you just want to be healthier and have a healthier version of pastas. I have found the most tastiest gluten-free options for my kids. We don't always do gluten-free, but I try to, split the difference. Definitely.
And I think the other thing that has been helpful to me is years ago, my parents actually came to plant-based eating when I was born, and that's 62 years ago.
Oh my goodness.
Back then you had to go to specialty stores to buy the stuff. But now you can go to like a Walmart or a Target and right on the shelf where the traditional stuff that we used to eat is, you find this other stuff. And it's often now competitively priced so that you're not spending a whole lot of money like you used to when you would go to a specialty store.
Exactly.
I love this.
This thickened up so nicely. It's so quick, guys. You can make this for your family. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. And it is so good.
And healthy for you. And healthy for you.
All of the vegetables. I'm so happy to be a part of this today. And I'm so happy to know you. I'm so happy that God has blessed you. He has equipped you for this time. Because this is what we need. We all need to know how to live a more healthy, fulfilling life and where to start. Because some people are so confused about where to start. And if you're like me with kids with food allergies, it was absolutely overwhelming.
Yes. Yes.
And that's what made me decide, like, you know, one day I was here cooking with my sister because I had to educate everybody around us about their food allergies and to help them stay safe.
Right.
And I said, you know what? I know there's somebody else out there who's going through the same thing that I'm going through as a parent,
Right.
or even as someone themselves who has been diagnosed with a food allergy. And if you just want to live healthier, it just happens to be a vegan plant-based diet that I do at home. And so I want to encourage people. Don't be overwhelmed or discouraged when things go wrong. It's going to work out for your good. God has
It's going to be that lesson that God is sending you. Because what I started to say before was this trial of your faith,
yes,
and learning how to cook for your kids. Now you have come up with all this stuff that other people can learn from you and don't have to go through all the work that you did. And your kids are thriving, because a lot of times people will say, yeah, but her kids, no, your kids are thriving. And that is amazing. Yes.
They are thriving. And you know what? I think I joke all the time with my husband. It makes them healthier because most of the things that are processed and are prepackaged, they can't have it because it's got, like, you know, something in it like dairy or nuts or something in it that they can't have. So even though it scares me to think that if they got something, you know, accidentally, it could be fatal.
Yes.
But I am happy to teach them here how to eat, how to avoid those things, and how for us to make food not so much of the main event for them.
Right.
It has to be a point of just knowing that it's for your nourishment.
Right.
So don't make it the fun. You are the fun.
And somebody said, what kind of peas did you use? Is that Ripple?
Yes, this is Ripple.
Girl, that Ripple is some good stuff. You hear me? Oh, it's so good. And I didn't understand how you get a green pea and it's white milk. I didn't understand that. But there it is. So Ripple is it. That's the one they use. Okay, they're saying that our time is up.
Okay.
So if you want to follow, are you going to show us the finish?
Let me show you the plate.
Okay. If you want to follow Heather, go on Instagram to The Chef Mommy. Chef Mommy. And you can continue to follow her. And somebody's asking for the recipe. We'll get the recipe and post it on our social media spaces so that you can have access to it as well. Everything I've seen Heather do is always delicious. So whether you are still raising children or in an empty nest, you can make healthy stuff for your family that looks good, tastes good. It is good for you. Allergy free, if indeed that's what your challenge is, but full of all the amazing phytochemical benefit that the Creator has put in that food. Girl,
that's my dish.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you so much, Heather. Take pictures and type the recipe so we can post it on social media. Don't leave if you can stay around for the Q&A, but if you got to take care of those babies, we understand.
Yes, I'll see you guys soon. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks so much.
You're welcome. Bye.
I remember taking a lot of trips to Walmart as I was growing up. My mother loved that place. I can still hear her as she entered her final years, calling me at 5 o'clock in the morning and saying, Donna, if you have plans to go to Walmart before the traffic gets heavy, I would love to go pick up a few things. I'll be ready when you get here. It's no wonder then that when faced with a life-altering medical diagnosis, I could depend on Walmart to find resources for my journey to better health. Whether it was to get a plant for the garden or my family room, exercise gear for my morning walks through the neighborhood, bath salts for my weekly hot soak, an inspirational book to read, a cast iron skillet or countertop appliance for cooking, herbs to boost my immune system, or recipe ingredients to cook up good health in a delicious dish. I could always get exactly what I needed. And today, 22 years after being told I would live only 2 to 5 years, I'm still finding resources at Walmart for my journey and referring my clients for resources on their journey too. Don't know what you've been taught about your health, but this I do know. Healthy lifestyle choices are the most underprescribed medical treatment for chronic disease. Yet, when prescribed and faithfully applied, they
They are the most powerful medical treatment available and have no negative side effects. I'm Donna Green-Goodman, health educator, breast cancer survivor, author, wife and mom, and lifelong bargain shopper. I teach health education and wellness at Lifestyle Therapeutix, your local Lifestyle for Better Health Center in Huntsville, Alabama. I do Wellness Wednesdays each week with Elizabeth Gentle on WAFF 48. You can follow me at Still Shoutin' on Instagram and Twitter. You can visit me at lifestyletherapeutics.com and watch me cook up health on our Lifestyle Therapeutics YouTube channel. I'm on a journey to better health, and I'd love for you to join me. And everything you need for your journey, from the garden to the grocery, is available at Walmart. Don't delay. Join us on the journey. It's time to get this party started.
Okay, we're back for Q&A. He's pulling us all up, those who have stayed. I shared that video about Walmart because in our community, we're concerned about food deserts and people who don't have access. And for whatever reason, we can almost always find a Walmart near those communities. And we don't want those people to think that they have to leave those communities to get what they need to get. And so we did some partnerships with Walmart here in Huntsville, and I would take people on grocery store tours, and the amount of organic stuff that has come up is just amazing. We're here now with Dr. D. Knight, and one of the questions that has come up, Dr. D, is how do you avoid not living in fear? I understand doing your part, but stories like this make me so nervous.
So taking action can be something that counteracts whatever fear you have, because if you're not doing anything, if you're going to listen to this program and say, wow, what a good program, and go to sleep tonight and be the same person tomorrow that you were yesterday and the day before, then yes, you should probably have a little bit to fear. If you're not making any changes in your life, you probably should have a little fear, and that ought to put some fire under your feet. However, programs like this are to, well, number one, to celebrate, okay? So to celebrate, glory to God, what has gone on in your life, Sister Goodman, but also programs like this are to educate you so that you can use that knowledge. I love what I think it's Maya Angelou who said, when you know better, you do better. And so you can now take the knowledge that you have and impact the next generation. Something that you can do as far as fears is start to tell yourself true things, like decide what the truth is, right? You have to do it ahead of time. You can't wait until the fear comes and crawls into your lap and think that you're going to have wonderful, positive thoughts in your life. That's not going to happen. You have to pre-plan this thing, okay? So rather than allowing fear to run your life, and fears are normal and natural. It's okay to have fears and to be scared about things. It's like the number one thing that the Bible tells us all the time: fear not, do not be afraid, right? And so what you can do is choose, I will not be afraid, or I will not let fear be the driver. Even if fear starts to inform me of some things, some changes that I need to make, it will not be the pilot. It will not be the one that drives all of my decisions. I will have informed decisions, and that's what programs like this are about, making informed decisions.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Faith Felder, I have stage 3 kidney disease and can't tolerate drinking half my weight in water because of urinary incompetence. What's your recommendation for me? Is 64 ounces of water enough?
So it depends on your weight again. And the beauty of eating a whole food plant-based diet is that it's rich in water. So if you are truly following a whole food plant-based diet, you won't need to drink as much as I mentioned in the story. It's just that most Americans aren't doing that. And so just to try to get them on the right path, I want to make sure everyone's well hydrated. So yes, you have to take into consideration, your comorbid diseases, folks who have heart failure. Yes, you got to be careful. Yes, if you've got, chronic kidney disease, you've got to be careful.
Yeah, if you have those conditions and you're moving towards a plant-based diet or embrace the totally plant-based diet, it's going to improve those conditions. Yes?
Most definitely. Yes, okay. And eating let me be clear. If you have been unkind to your body for a long time, the body will take a beating and kind of try to compensate, but after a while you reach a threshold and the damage is done, and you can't get heart muscle back once it's dead. You can't get nephrons back once they're dead. But you can get some improvement. It's like folks who have who smoked for decades. Their lungs aren't going to be as good as ours who haven't smoked at all, but they will get some improvement. So it is beneficial to make some changes, no matter how old you are. I've got people who are 80,
yes,
80, and I still encourage them to eat a whole food, plant-based diet, exercise, all the things, I tell my 20-year-olds.
Yes. And all of us seem to be saying the same principles of healthy living. Dr. D, another question for you. With your specialty in trauma, they want to know, you do accept insurance, correct?
I do. So I am not accepting new clients for therapy at this time. I do specialize also in diagnostic clarity, so helping doctors and therapists and clients understand what their correct diagnosis is so that we know what's the best form of treatment going forward. So that's what I'm kind of focused on right now. And then the therapy caseload that I have, my husband does accept insurance as well. So I think somebody was asking about Blue Cross Blue Shield.
And that's the other part of the question. Her son is seeking a therapist, and your husband is accepting patients, correct?
Yes, he is. Absolutely.
Okay. Is there a number?
Information. I'm
Okay.
sorry?
Is there a number or a way for them to contact?
Yes, I will drop the information and I will put it on the whatever the main thing is that you're.
Okay, so that information is going to go.
Yes.
Okay, and then this other question, and then we're going to have to go because we're past time because of the little foul poet at the beginning. When you talked about the smoothies, Dr. Faith, I have discovered that the example of the smoothie that you gave is not a healthy option because so much of it is processed. And you suggested that people eat their fruit. Do you feel the same way about taking a whole banana and a whole apple and some berries and blending that compared to the one that you saw in the store? Because I was surprised when I stopped and read the label one day. I'm like, this isn't what I do at home. And a person wants to know, if you're making your own smoothie with whole fruits, how does that compare to what you find in the grocery store?
So it's sort of like what you talked about earlier, meeting people where they are. And so full disclosure, I'll have a smoothie every once in a while, but I try to individualize, the plan. So Rachel was diabetic, and blending, even if she made her smoothies at home, but even still, that wasn't the best food for her, because our goal was to get off of medication, get her blood sugar normalized. And she needed every fiber that she could have in her diet. We don't want to destroy the fiber. We don't want to cut up the fiber at all. We want to, because
you want her to chew it herself.
Exactly. Fiber is like I tell folks, it's like a winter coat, on your blueberries. And as soon as you take the fiber off, now you're exposing all the sugar and you're going to absorb it all the way down. Think of like an apple. An apple by itself is just 5 grams. But as you process it, even if you do it at home, you're going to lose the fiber. By the time you get to juice, there's zero fiber.
Right.
Even if you made the juice, it's still 0 fiber. So it's ideally, it's best to eat your fruits and vegetables.
Okay. All righty. Well, I thank you for staying by and answering these few questions. There are some more that are in the chat and stuff, and I'll probably get them forwarded to you guys and then maybe put some answers in the back. But thank you so much for being with us for this celebration. You have made my day. This was probably better than having a party, right?
Only for you, Donna. Only for you.
Love
thank
you so much.
You.
Where
love
do we
you.
go? Love you too. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Okay, so where do we go from here? This is my challenge to you. You have now had the opportunity to listen to professionals talk about it. I use breast cancer as the vehicle, but what I did for breast cancer, you can do for diabetes and hypertension and obesity and lupus and other types of cancer and depression and all those sorts of things. And I want you to do it. I want you to not just listen and get excited and be afraid, but use the fear to push you into action. Let it be a you stress so that you can make the changes. We want you to follow each of the people who have presented tonight. A lot of the promotional information has their contact information, and they are on Instagram and Facebook. I have sent an email to those of you who have registered, inviting you to register for a class that I'm going to be starting the 1st of August called None of These Diseases, Beating the Odds Against Chronic Disease. And if you're interested in that, I'm sure Deidre will put that information in the chat. And if you're interested in regular counseling, we can do that with you as well. Go watch some videos. What the Health, Forks Over Knives. Sit down at your computer and Google some stuff. Find some plant-based recipes. Find a relative who is literally trying to live and go in the kitchen together. While you're home with kids for the summer, learn how to plant some stuff, cook some stuff, can some stuff, do some stuff. This beautiful cake that you see behind me is not something that we eat all the time, but I have a niece who is not interested in veganism or vegetarianism, but she's trying to save her thyroid. So she has moved to a plant-based diet and decided that cake is something that she enjoys making, and she is now working to make those so that she can offer alternatives to other people. So Shantae, I'm with you, girl, and I want to see your health improve. It has been my joy to have you here with me. If you have people who didn't get to see it tonight, share the link. It's going to be up on our pages when we're done tonight. I'd like to thank the producer, Kurt Nugent. He is the bomb diggity. I appreciate this platform and the way he has allowed me to come into your home. The Bible says that his greatest wish for us is that we prosper and be in good health. He is not short in giving us the miracle, but we have to do our part so that we can have the miracle. So I challenge you to take those 7 steps to better health and then post your success story, your testimony somewhere, and get about the business of telling other people how they too can beat the odds, because we were created in the image of God with his intention that we live forever without disease, and he is willing to help us to do that today. Thanks for being with me. Have a great 4th of July. Get you some mushrooms or some veggie burgers for the grill, okay? And if you need a potato salad recipe, let me know. I got one that you can hook up. All right, that's it for now. Thanks so much for joining, and praise God for his mercy to me that I'm here with you tonight, able to see you and celebrate his grace. Bye-bye.